Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, welcome, I'm Stefania. This video is gonna be a little bit different from my other videos because it's not a plan with me, it's not a flip through, it's not a tutorial, but it's gonna be a video all about this spread, the bookshelf. I think that this spread has been seen so many times over and over through the years, I would say now, because people love to use it a lot in their reading journal, but it could be also a wonderful option if you don't have a reading journal because you don't care about having it, but you want still to keep track of the books that you read through the year. So we're gonna talk about this one. I'm gonna tell you 10 different ways to use this tracker, and if you're gonna stick till the end of the video, then I'm gonna give you one more option. Let's call it a bonus one. Talking about this spread, I've decided to call it Books of 2022 this year, and as you can see, it's completely full. Like, I've colored every single book. If you've been following me, you know that I've previously said this, that I wouldn't have created another one after this was complete, and this is because I've created it this year just for an aesthetic thing. Like, I really love to see it in this way. I was literally just using it finished a book, good. After I was done with it, I was coming to this page and I was coloring one book. I ran out of space because I had a goal for 2022 and was 30 books because I've never read that much. I've started last year, but this year I don't know what happened. I read so much. Like for others, probably it's gonna be like not so many books, just a tiny bit. For me, it's a lot. And so I ran out of space. At the beginning of the year, I was sure I would have left a lot of books white, because if you read 30 books, you can't color 35, you know. To create this spread, I've used some clear stamps and I've done this on another piece of paper because I wanted to color it with alcohol markers and dab it through everything, so the only option was to do it on another paper and then attach it here, and that's what I've done. I think that after this little intro about how I've used it this year, so without a real meaning behind, we can go on with the video and talk about how you can actually use this spread. Because with this one, you can track so many things. Before jumping in the video, one more thing important to say is this. You're gonna create this spread in the same way in all the different options. What's gonna be different from one to the other is the color code. That's all. For one, you might need only a few colors, for another type you're gonna need more colors, but the structure is always the same one. As I've said, I've used clear stamps, but usually people just draw them by hand, and I also like to put some objects in the middle, but I've decided to just put books. That's up to you. Option number 1, which is probably the most common. You're gonna need only 3 colors, or 2 according to your habit, I would say. You can use this tracker to keep track of your books if you've read audiobooks, ebooks, or physical books. So you're gonna need only 3 colors. However, if you're, for example, a person like me who doesn't listen to audiobooks, a color would be pointless. So I would need only 2 colors, one for ebooks and one for physical books. So the number of color can change from the type of books that you read. According to me, it's pointless to go for this option if you only read, for example, physical books. If you don't read ebooks and you don't listen to audiobooks, then it's kind of pointless because you would only color everything with one color. By looking at the spread at the end of the year, you'll be able to see how many books you've read that were ebooks, how many were physical books, and how many audiobooks. Option number 2, ratings. You can decide to create a color code with or 5 or 9 colors. I'm gonna explain it. If you're a person that only gives full stars, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars to a book, you're gonna need 5 different colors. But if you're a person that, like me, also give half stars, you're gonna need 9 colors. A star, star and a half, 2 stars, 2 and a half, 3 stars, 3 and a half, 4 stars, 4 and a half, 5 stars, so you're gonna need 9 colors. Personally, since I also give the half, I would use 9 colors, because this year I've used my Goodreads challenge tracker to keep track of my ratings, and I've decided to go only with 5 colors without thinking, and now whenever I look at it, I can see from that page if a book was, for example, a 3 stars or a 3 stars and a half. So according to me, it's better to go for 9 colors. Option number 3, genres. You could decide to color the books according to the type of book. For example, if you read fantasy, you can color it in blue. If it's a romance, you can use a pink. If it's a thriller, you can use a yellow, and so goes on. How many colors will you need? This depends on you. If you usually read only romance and fantasy, it's kind of pointless, for example, to add something like a color for thriller. Because if you don't read them, it's pointless to have a color that you will never use it. So in this case, the number of colors to use is different from everyone else. It depends on you. Definitely, it's not a thing that I would keep track on, because I always have this problem when it comes to, I would say, considering a book in a way or another. Like, if it's a fantasy but there's even some romance into it, how will I color it? It's kind of something that I don't like personally, but I understand that some other people might decide to do it and be like, okay, it's true, there's also some romance, but the biggest part of the book is fantasy, and so I'll stick to color it in fantasy. This is an example. At the same time, it's something that you wouldn't want to track if, for example, you only read romance. It's pointless because you would only use one color. Option number 4, authors. You can keep track of them with this spread. But let me explain a little bit, because this can be for everyone, for sure. If you always read the same authors over and over, then maybe you're gonna find yourself understanding that you read mainly 5 different authors, and so you might decide to use 5 colors. Each single author will have a color, and then you can add one more color for other authors. For example, if you read a lot of books all from Nicholas Sparks, and then you find yourself reading from Sarah J. Maas and then Colleen Hoover, I just named a few, which are usually my to-go-to, I would say, at this point, then you could decide to use a color for each single one of them. However, it's something that wouldn't be good for me, because I've noticed this year I've read so many books from so many different authors, and it would be a mess to keep track of that. Like, it would be almost impossible, because there would be too many colors and the color code would be too big. So this option can work if you usually read only a few authors, with the option of adding a color for other authors. At the same time, if you don't like this, but you like to keep track always talking about the author, about whether the author is a man or a woman, you can decide to use 2 colors. One for man, one for woman. In this way, you won't keep track of who read the book, but you're gonna keep track of you've read more books written by men or women. That's it. Which, again, I wouldn't use, because it's not something that I really look to. It's not like I really care whether a book has been written by a man or a woman. It's just up to me, but it's just who I am, but this could be different for someone else. Option number 5. In this case, you're gonna need 12 colors. You can decide to color the book according to the month of the year in which you've read them. For example, if in January you're gonna read 7 books, you're gonna color 7 books in, in yellow. In February, you're gonna read 4 books and you can color them in pink, and so goes on. In this case, by looking at this tracker, you'll see how many books you've read each single month. It's kind of a good idea, but at the same time, I don't know if I would like to use it or not. For sure, I wouldn't like to use it if I'm gonna color them in order, because then I would have, for example, all these books in a color, the next in another. Or I would like to, for example, color the books randomly, so having them all over the page and not have a whole January together. But again, this is up to you whether you want to follow this method and whether you like to color them in order or just randomly. So if you've read 7 books in January, color all 7 books in a row, or color 7 books randomly, like one here, one here, one here, one here. And that depends on you. What's gonna be the same for everyone, if you're gonna decide to track how many books you've read in each single month with this tracker, is that you're gonna need 12 colors, because there are 12 months in a year, and that's it. Option number 6, the number of pages. You can decide to track how many books you've read that were, for example, under 200 pages, those that were between 200 to 300. Again, the color code depends on you. You can decide to put, for example, give a color, so let's say red for books that you read had less than 200 pages, then yellow for books between 200 to 250, then green to 251 to 300, and so goes on. So you can decide to divide them for basically starting from 200 pages and then creating a color code for every 50 pages more. Or for example, you can decide to use just a few colors and color 200, and then from 200 to 300, and from 300 to 400, and so goes on. Option number 7. This can work for people that read books in different languages. If you only read books, for example, in English, then don't do this, because again, you would have only one color. But if you, for example, read books in English, in Spanish, in Italian, so you read books in more than a language, then you might decide to give a color for each language. For example, I read books both in Italian and in English, so I could decide to use this tracker with 2 different colors to keep track of how many books I read that were in Italian and how many were in English. And again, it's not something that can work for you if you only read books, for example, in English, because then you would use, again, one color. Option number 8. You might decide to color the books according to the country. This can be used in 2 different ways, kind of like the author one. You can decide to color the books according to the country in which they are settling. So, for example, if you read a book and the whole story takes place, let's say, in London, you can decide to color it according to what you're going to give to Great Britain. If you're going to read a book whose story is going to be all in the States, you can decide to color it with another color. This is the first way to do it. Another way, however, is instead to look at the country of the author. So if the author is from the state, color it with, for example, red. And it doesn't matter if the story in the book is happening in Spain or China or whatever. It doesn't matter because you're looking at the author and not at the story. So this depends on what you want to keep track. Personally, if you read only books by author of your country, it's kind of pointless. Because again, you would only have one color. Option number 9. You can keep track of your fiction and non-fiction book. In this case, you're gonna need only 2 colors. It's kind of pointless to use this one if, for example, you only read fiction. I have read only fiction this year, so for me it would be pointless because it would be all in a color. This is up to you. Again, if you read quite a lot of both, you're kind of there, then you can have sense to use this tracker in that way, but elsewhere, I don't think it's something that would fit for you. Option number 10. You can decide to color code with 2 colors and give one color for standalone and another one to series. If you read fantasy, you know that usually series are there, always, all the time. If you're decided to start for fantasy this year, let me tell you one thing that I learned on my own. Standalone are quite hard to find. It's easier to find a series. However, you could decide to use this tracker if you read different books. So you could decide to use 2 colors to keep track of that. Bonus option. This is mainly for these that have a huge physical TBR. TBR are these books that you buy, you put them, and you stock them. Because book lovers just love to buy books. It's a thing, whether you like it or not. I'm gonna be honest, I've even met people that love to buy books and they don't love to read, so it can be an addiction, I would say. A lot of people have a big TBR. There are people that have more than 100 books in their TBR. And this kind of scares me because I don't want to go there. If this is your problem, so you buy a lot of books, you have a huge TBR, you could use this spread to keep track of your TBR. What you're gonna do this time is not drawing a random number of books. It's not even drawing the books that are, let's say, your goal for the year. It's about you counting how many books you have in your TBR and draw them. For example, if you have 55 books, you're gonna draw 55 books. When you're gonna read a book from your TBR, you're gonna color a book. So in this case, you don't have to use a specific color. There's not a color code, but it's like coloring your TBR. So you're gonna start with a white spread and your goal is to color it completely. At the same time, if you like to buy books so much, I would suggest you to leave empty space for more books. So each single time you're gonna buy one more book and add it to your TBR, then you're gonna add one book in your spread. In this way, you're gonna see by looking at it how many books you've read. Like, you will have to count them for the exact number to understand how many you still have. But for example, if you would have a spread this big and you will see, let's make it an example, more than half of it colored just by looking at it, you know you're doing a good job because you've actually started doing your TBR. But if your spread is gonna keep on growing and growing with many more books, but there won't be so much color into it, then that is a problem. So this was a video that I really wanted to do because I think it's kind of nice to have a single place where you can see different ways to use a tracker. I'm pretty sure there are so many other options, but I didn't want to make this video too long, even if probably it's already quite long. I still don't know how I'm gonna use this tracker next year because I want to use it to keep track of something this time and not just like this. Also, you can decide another way to make it look better could be also to just do it like I've done, but instead of coloring it randomly, color it according to the book itself. But next year, I don't want to color it like this year without anything to track. However, I still have to decide what I want to track with it. However, I hope that I give you some ideas about this spread so you can decide whether you can use it or not, and if yes, how. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to give it a thumb up and to subscribe for more videos like this one. If you would love to see anything in particular, just write in a comment and I'll try to make a video about it. As always, thank you so much for staying with me today. See you next time. Bye!